Have you ever wondered why, despite our best efforts, we often feel a profound sense of incompleteness, a gnawing emptiness that whispers of self-abandon somewhere along the winding path of life? Imagine, for a moment, a grand, ancient library, its shelves laden with countless tomes, each representing a facet of who you are. Now, picture a dust-covered section, largely forgotten, filled with stories you deem too painful, too shameful, or simply too inconvenient to acknowledge. This is the shadow self, the repository of all that we repress, deny, and project onto others. It is a part of us we secretly abandon, hoping its absence will bring peace, yet finding only a persistent ache. This abandoned self, however, does not vanish. It merely recedes into the subconscious, wielding its influence from the depths, subtly orchestrating the discord in our relationships, the self-sabotage in our ambitions, and the disquiet in our souls. It's the hidden architect of our self-worth struggles, the unseen hand pulling the strings of our emotional behavior. Consider the tale of Alara, a woman who seemed, to the casual observer, to possess an enviable life. Her career as a respected architect was flourishing. Her home was a testament to sophisticated taste, and her social calendar was perpetually full. Yet, beneath the veneer of success, Alara carried a profound sense of inadequacy, a persistent whisper that she was not enough, that her achievements were merely a facade. This feeling, a constant companion since childhood, had driven her to ceaseless striving. She was a quintessential perfectionist, meticulously curating every aspect of her life, from her perfectly coiffed hair to the curated discussions at her dinner parties. Her friends often remarked on her unwavering composure, her ability to navigate any social labyrinth with effortless grace. But this grace was a performance, a carefully constructed persona, designed to conceal a deep-seated fear of judgment and rejection. The seed of this fear had been sown in her youth by a critical father who, in his own anxieties, had often dismissed her nascent artistic expressions as frivolous, her emotional outbursts as weak. Alara, darling, true strength lies in control and precision, he would often say, his voice a silken whip. And so, the vibrant, spontaneous child who delighted in messy paint and uninhibited laughter began to recede, replaced by a meticulously sculpted image of competence and quiet restraint. One evening, at a gallery opening celebrating her latest architectural triumph, a seemingly innocuous comment struck Alara with the force of a physical blow. A prominent critic, known for his sharp wit, remarked, "Alara, your designs are undeniably brilliant, but they possess a certain austere beauty. One might say they lack a touch of unrestrained passion." The words, intended as a professional observation, resonated with the deep-seated fear Alara had long suppressed. It was the echo of her father's dismissals, the painful reminder of the frivolous parts of herself she had abandoned. A tremor ran through her, a barely perceptible crack in her carefully constructed facade. She smiled a practiced, polite smile, but inside, a storm raged. The perfection she had so tirelessly pursued felt suddenly hollow, a gilded cage rather than a sanctuary. Later that night, alone in her impeccably designed apartment, the silence amplified the cacophony of her inner turmoil. She found herself drawn to an old box, tucked away in the back of her closet, filled with forgotten mementos from her childhood. Among them was a sketchbook, its pages filled with vibrant, unrestrained drawings, fantastical creatures, and swirling colors. A wave of nostalgia, tinged with profound sadness, washed over her. She saw the raw, uninhibited joy in those drawings, the boundless imagination she had diligently suppressed. This was the self she had abandoned, the wild, artistic spirit her father had inadvertently, perhaps even unknowingly, crushed. The incident at the gallery became a turning point, a crack in the dam of her carefully controlled emotions. She began to notice the subtle ways this abandonment manifested in her life. Her relationships, while seemingly robust, lacked true intimacy. She always held a part of herself back, fearing that revealing her vulnerability would expose her perceived inadequacies. Her colleagues respected her, but no one truly knew her. The creative wellspring that once fueled her architectural passion felt diminished, replaced by a methodical, almost sterile approach to design. The spark, the joy, the unrestrained passion the critic had mentioned seemed to have been extinguished. She felt a profound loneliness, a sense of being utterly disconnected from her authentic self. It was a stark realization that the constant pursuit of external validation, driven by the abandonment of her inner child, had left her bereft. The weight of this realization was crushing, yet within it lay the fragile seed of possibility. It was the dawning of awareness, the crucial first step toward reclamation. What would it be like, a silent voice within her whispered, to reclaim those vibrant colors, to draw with that unrestrained joy once more? The question hung in the air, both terrifying and liberating, an invitation to delve into the very shadow she had so diligently avoided. Illyra's journey into the labyrinth of her own psyche was not a gentle stroll. It was a harrowing excavation, a confrontation with the very parts of herself she had disowned. She began with small, almost imperceptible shifts. She started painting again, not for display or professional acclaim, but purely for the visceral joy of creation, the messy embrace of color and form. The initial strokes were hesitant, awkward, as if her hands had forgotten the language of unrestrained expression. But with each brushstroke, a faint flicker of that long dormant self began to stir. She found herself drawn to autobiographical works, to artists who embraced imperfection and raw emotion. This was a radical departure from her carefully curated life, a deliberate act of defiance against the internal critic echoing her father's voice. She also started engaging in more authentic conversations with a trusted friend, revealing glimpses of her vulnerabilities, the fear of not being enough, the yearning for genuine connection. The initial discomfort was immense, a visceral fear of exposure, but the relief that followed was profound. Each small act of courage, each tentative step towards authenticity, chipped away at the hardened shell she had built around herself. She was, in essence, reparenting her abandoned inner child, validating its needs, acknowledging its existence. This wasn't merely about personal growth. It was about the arduous yet ultimately liberating process of individuation, a Jungian concept that speaks to the journey of becoming a whole, integrated self, recognizing and integrating both the conscious and unconscious aspects of one's personality. Illyra's narrative mirrors the universal struggle of the wounded child archetype, a fundamental aspect of the human psyche that carries the scars of early experiences, particularly those that led to feelings of inadequacy, abandonment, or unworthiness. This archetype, if left unacknowledged, can dictate adult behaviors, driving individuals towards perfectionism, people-pleasing, or self-sabotage, all in a desperate attempt to gain the validation or love that was perceived to be withheld in childhood. Illyra, in her pursuit of external validation and her abandonment of her authentic self, became a prisoner of her own carefully constructed facade. The theme woven through her story is the profound impact of parental figures on the development of self-worth and the enduring consequences of denying one's intrinsic nature. This often leads to the development of a false self, a protective mechanism designed to navigate a world that felt unsafe for the true self. To truly heal, to integrate this abandoned self, you must first acknowledge its existence. Look inwards, dear viewer, with courage and compassion. Where have you denied your true feelings? What passions have you suppressed? What aspect of yourself have you deemed unworthy of expression, perhaps to fit into societal expectations or to gain approval? Understand that the discomfort you feel when confronting these abandoned parts is not a sign of weakness, but a vital signal, a beacon guiding you toward wholeness. Engage in shadow work, a crucial practice in Jungian psychology that involves confronting and integrating these disowned aspects of the self. This might involve journaling, therapy, creative expression, or simply allowing yourself to feel uncomfortable emotions without judgment. Embrace the paradox. What you resist persists. The more you deny your shadow, the more powerful it will operate from the depths, influencing your choices and relationships in ways you may not consciously understand. Begin to reintegrate these pieces, not by forcing them into a mold, but by gently inviting them back into the tapestry of your being. This is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming whole, acknowledging that every aspect of your being, even the parts you deem flawed, contributes to the rich complexity of who you are. The path to healing is not a linear one, but a spiral, returning to similar themes with deeper understanding each time. The courage to face the self you secretly abandoned is the first, most powerful step toward a life of authenticity, joy, and profound inner peace. The journey inward, as Illyra discovered, often brings us face to face with the pervasive influence of our unconscious mind, that vast, unseen landscape where the seeds of our past experiences blossom into the patterns of our present. It's a realm where the unspoken desires and unresolved conflicts of our youth continue to exert a powerful pull. Consider profound wisdom embedded in the words of Carl Jung. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. This isn't merely a philosophical musing. It's a psychological imperative, a clarion call to confront the unseen forces that shape our reality, especially the projections we cast upon others. These projections are like cinematic reels, playing out our inner dramas on the screen of our external relationships. When we abandon part of ourselves, those disowned fragments don't disappear. They simply find a new home in the people and situations around us, acting as mirrors reflecting our own unacknowledged truths. Ilara's meticulous control and her desperate need for external validation were, in essence, projections of her own internal critical parent, a mirror of the very judgment she feared from others. This fear, being seen as unrestrained or frivolous, was not just a relic of her father's words. It was an internalized structure, a self-imposed prison. She had projected her own suppressed spontaneity onto others, viewing those who embraced their wilder, more expressive sides with a mixture of admiration and thinly veiled disdain. This dynamic often plays out in relationships, where we find ourselves inexplicably drawn to or repelled by qualities in others that are, in fact, unacknowledged aspects of ourselves. A woman who constantly seeks attention might be projecting her own unfulfilled need for self-affirmation, while another who consistently criticizes the perceived narcissism of others might be repressing her own desire for recognition. The unconscious, in its cunning wisdom, ensures that these abandoned aspects of the self continue to demand our attention, often to the very people we interact with most intimately. Jung also posited the concepts of the anima and animus, the archetypal feminine and masculine principles within the unconscious of every individual, regardless of their biological sex. For Ilara, as a woman, the animus represents her inner masculine qualities: rationality, assertiveness, drive, and the capacity for conscious thought and action. A healthy integration of the animus allows a woman to assert her boundaries, pursue her ambitions with clarity, and engage with the world effectively. However, when parts of the self are abandoned, particularly those related to creativity, intuition, and emotional expression, often associated with the anima for men, but equally crucial for a woman's wholeness, the animus can become overly rigid, dominant, or even tyrannical. Ilara's extreme focus on control and logical precision, while outwardly successful, pointed to an underdeveloped or imbalanced animus that had overridden her more intuitive and expressive feminine qualities. She had leaned so heavily into the masculine traits of her profession, the structure and logic of architecture, that she had stifled the feminine aspects of her creative spirit, the very wellspring of artistic inspiration. This imbalance manifested as an emotional rigidity, a difficulty in connecting with her deeper feelings, and a pervasive sense of anhedonia, a loss of joy in life's simple pleasures. The debate arises: how much of our suffering is truly fate, and how much is merely the unacknowledged script written by our own unconscious? B.F. Skinner, with his focus on operant conditioning, might argue that Ilara's behavior was a product of reinforcement, her father's approval or lack thereof shaping her responses. Albert Bandura, in his social learning theory, would emphasize the role of observational learning and self-efficacy, Ilara observing her father's behavior and internalizing the belief that emotional expression was detrimental. Yet Carl Rogers, with his person-centered approach, would underscore the incongruence between Ilara's ideal self, the perfectionist, and her true self, the creative spirit, leading to psychological distress. The beauty of these interwoven psychological perspectives lies in their ability to illuminate different facets of the human experience, converging on the undeniable truth that our past, both conscious and unconscious, profoundly influences our present. Ilara's story is a compelling case study in the power of early conditioning and the subsequent struggle for self-actualization. Her internal landscape was a battleground between the conditioned responses of her youth and the yearning for authentic expression. Consider the intricate dance of denial and revelation that occurs when these unconscious forces are at play. Ilara, for years, had diligently maintained the illusion of self-sufficiency, of having it all together. But the critic's comment, a seemingly innocuous trigger, had acted as a catalyst. cracking open the carefully constructed shell of her ego. This was not a random occurrence. It was the unconscious demanding attention, a subtle yet persistent urging towards integration. The discomfort she felt was not a sign of failure, but a powerful indicator that growth was imminent, that the abandoned parts were clamoring for recognition. She began to observe her own projections, her impatience with emotionally expressive colleagues, her tendency to dismiss seemingly irrational decisions. She started to see that these reactions weren't about the other person. They were about her own discomfort with those very traits within herself. This was the first step in dismantling the illusion of external blame and taking radical responsibility for her inner world. She had to become her own debater, arguing against the entrenched beliefs that had kept her imprisoned. The process of confronting these projections and integrating the shadow is often a painful one, akin to surgery without anesthesia. It requires immense courage and a willingness to sit with discomfort. As Erik Erikson's stages of psychosocial development suggest, unresolved conflicts from earlier stages can echo throughout adulthood, influencing our identity formation and our capacity for intimacy. Ilara's struggle with identity, her fear of exposure, was deeply rooted in her childhood experiences, particularly the development of autonomy versus shame and doubt. Her father's criticism had instilled a pervasive shame around her natural expressiveness, leading her to abandon that part of herself. But in this very pain lies potential for profound transformation. By acknowledging these abandoned facets, Ilara began to reclaim her power, to heal the old wounds that had festered in the shadows. The creative surge she experienced when she resumed painting was not merely a hobby. It was a profound act of self-reclamation, a dialogue with her unconscious, a gentle coaxing of the abandoned child back into the light. It was a conscious effort to balance her overly developed animus with her long-suppressed anima. The individual, in their journey toward wholeness, often embodies a hero archetype, embarking on a perilous quest into the depths of their own psyche. This journey is not without its trials and tribulations, its moments of profound doubt and despair. Ilara, initially a classic example of the achiever archetype driven by external validation, began to shift toward the artist archetype, finding solace and truth in creative expression, a direct confrontation with the abandoned parts of herself. The central theme here is the critical importance of integrating the unconscious, specifically through confronting projections and understanding the dynamics of the anima/animus. It's about recognizing that what you see in others, both good and bad, often holds a mirror to your own unexamined self. To navigate this treacherous but ultimately liberating terrain, dear viewer, you must cultivate a fierce curiosity about your own inner landscape. When you find yourself reacting strongly to someone else's behavior, pause. Ask yourself, what within me is this person reflecting? This isn't about blaming yourself. It's about taking ownership of your own internal experience. Begin to observe your projections in your daily interactions. Are you quick to criticize others for traits you secretly fear within yourself? Do you admire qualities in others that you desperately wish you possessed but feel incapable of cultivating? This honest introspection is a gateway to dissolving the illusion of separation, allowing you to reclaim the scattered fragments of yourself. Recognize that the healing of pain, particularly the pain of abandonment, requires not only conscious effort, but also a compassionate understanding of the unconscious forces at play. Embrace the wisdom of Carl Rogers, who emphasized unconditional positive regard, and extend that same regard to yourself, especially to the parts you have long disowned. This is not a passive process. It is an active, ongoing engagement with your own psyche, a courageous commitment to making the unconscious conscious, thereby liberating yourself from the shackles of perceived fate and stepping into the expansive realm of self-actualization. The journey towards integrating the abandoned self culminates not in a grand, sudden revelation, but in a quiet yet profound inner rebirth, a gentle blossoming of authenticity. It is a courageous act of facing the self you secretly abandoned, not as a fragmented, broken entity, but as a complex, multifaceted being worthy of profound self-compassion. This ultimate reconciliation is the bedrock of genuine self-worth, a foundation built not on external validation, but on an unshakable inner knowing. The final step in this arduous yet rewarding process is the embracing of individuation, a continuous journey of becoming one's whole, unique self, integrating all conscious and unconscious aspects into a cohesive, and harmonious personality. This is not a destination, but a lifelong dance with the ever-evolving landscape of one's inner world, a commitment to perpetual growth and radical acceptance. Consider the ancient parable of the alchemist, not one who transmutes lead into gold, but one who transforms the base elements of the human psyche, fear, shame, denial, into the pure gold of self-acceptance and wisdom. Illyria's story, which began with the abandonment of her artistic, expressive self, found its profound resolution not in external accolades for her architectural prowess, but in the quiet, insistent re-emergence of her innate creativity after her initial forays into painting. She felt an inexplicable pull towards pottery, a medium that demanded a different kind of surrender, a tactile engagement with raw earth. The first few attempts were clumsy, the clay collapsing under her inexperienced hands, mirroring the fragility of her initial steps towards emotional vulnerability. Yet, with each failure, she found a strange sense of liberation. There was no pressure for perfection, no external critic looming. Only the soft, yielding clay and the rhythm of her own breath. She spent hours in the pottery studio, her hands covered in earth, her mind quieted by the meditative repetition of centering the clay on the wheel. This wasn't about producing masterpieces. It was about the process itself, the embodiment of a long-suppressed desire to create, to connect with something primal and authentic. One day, as she molded a simple bowl, its imperfections visible and celebrated, profound realization washed over her. The unevenness, the slight tilt, the textured surface, these weren't flaws. They were the story of its making, a testament to the human hand that shaped it. Just like her own life, her past struggles, her moments of doubt, her perceived imperfections. These were not weaknesses to be hidden, but integral parts of her unique tapestry. It was in that moment, with clay on her hands and a quiet joy in her heart, that she truly understood the essence of self-worth. It wasn't about being flawless. It was about embracing the entirety of her being, flaws and all. She felt a lightness she hadn't experienced since childhood, a profound sense of coming home to herself. This was her personal alchemy, the transformation of shame into acceptance, of fear into freedom. Her relationships, too, began to transform. She no longer sought external validation with the same intensity. Instead, she found herself able to offer genuine connection, to truly see and be seen. She started sharing her pottery, not as an exhibition of skill, but as an extension of her reclaimed self, a tangible expression of her inner world. The austere architect was still present, but now she was infused with the vibrant colors of the artist, the earthy wisdom of the creator. This emotional release, this letting go of the desperate need for external validation, is a defining characteristic of true healing. It's the moment when internal narrative shifts from "I am worthy if" to "I am worthy because I am." This is where the wisdom of the Stoics, like Epictetus, converges with modern trauma psychology. Stoicism teaches us to distinguish between what is within our control and what is not. Our internal responses, our perceptions, our values, these are within our control. The opinions of others, external circumstances, these are not. When we abandon parts of ourselves to gain external approval, we give away our internal power, making our peace dependent on fleeting external forces. Trauma, often stemming from early experiences of invalidation or abandonment, can lead to a pervasive sense of powerlessness, a feeling that our worth is contingent on others' acceptance. However, by engaging in shadow work and integrating those disowned parts, we reclaim that internal locus of control. We begin to understand that our value is inherent, not earned. William James, the father of American psychology, spoke of the stream of consciousness, the continuous flow of thoughts and feelings. When we deny parts of ourselves, we disrupt this flow, creating internal dams that lead to emotional stagnation. The path to healing involves allowing the stream to flow freely, embracing every aspect of our experience without judgment. The individual who embarks on this profound journey transitions from the victim archetype, trapped by past wounds, to the sovereign archetype, reclaiming their inner authority and ruling their own emotional kingdom. This is not a selfish act, but a necessary one for genuine connection and contribution to the world. The theme is the transformative power of self-acceptance and the liberation that comes from integrating all aspects of self, allowing for a peaceful inner rebirth. Dear viewer, your own inner alchemy awaits. Are there aspects of yourself that you have secretly abandoned? Perhaps to conform, to please, or to avoid pain? Now is the time to extend compassion to those disowned parts, to invite them back into the warmth of your conscious awareness. This isn't about perfection, it's about wholeness. Consider embracing practices that reconnect you with your inner world. Mindful walking in nature, feeling the earth beneath your feet. The quiet meditation that calms the racing mind. The fluid movement of yoga that releases tension held in the body. Or simply sitting in stillness, observing the ebb and flow of your thoughts without attachment. Engage in creative expression, drawing, writing, singing, not for external acclaim, but for the sheer joy of it, as a direct dialogue with your soul. Every step you take towards self-acceptance, every positive thought you cultivate to counteract the negative inner critic, is a revolutionary act of self-love. You possess an immense internal power, capable of transforming pain into wisdom, fear into courage. Embrace this power. Trust your inner knowing. Allow yourself the profound peace of knowing that you are enough, just as you are. This journey of radical self-acceptance is your greatest adventure, leading you to a rebirth that echoes through every fiber of your being. If you find this interesting or see yourself in the story, please leave a comment to help our channel feel from you. And if you know someone who needs this video, please send them this video as a necessary share. Thanks for watching. The end.